Hello and welcome to Books of Blood. My name is John, and once again I have got another installment in the Horror Across America series. So today we're going to be looking at South Dakota and Tennessee. I believe I've got a total of 12 books here. I think I've got maybe 2 from South Dakota. Just like North Dakota, it wasn't exactly easy to find books for this particular state. So that being said, let's go ahead and get underway, starting with South Dakota. And the first book I'm going to talk about today is called Tinfoil Butterfly, and this is by Rachel Eve Moulton. Emma is hitchhiking across the United States trying to outrun a violent, tragic past when she meets Lowell, the hot but dumb driver she hopes will take her as far as the Badlands. But Lowell is not as harmless as he seems, and a vicious scuffle leaves Emma bloody and stranded in an abandoned town in the Black Hills with an out-of-gas van, a loaded gun, and a snowstorm on the way. The town is eerily quiet, and Emma takes shelter in a diner where she stumbles across Earl, a strange little boy in a tinfoil mask, who steals her gun before begging her to help him get rid of George. As she is pulled deeper into Earl's bizarre, menacing world, the horrors of Emma's past creep closer, and she realizes she can't run forever. Tinfoil Butterfly is a seductively scary, chilling exploration of evil, how it sneaks in under your skin, flaring up when you least expect it, how it throttles you and won't let go. The beauty of Rachel Eve Moulton's ferocious, harrowing, and surprisingly moving debut is that it teaches us that love can do that too. And that is Tinfoil Butterfly, and that is by Rachel Eve Moulton. Okay. Alright, next we have got a little bit of historical horror fiction, and this is Black Hills, and this is by Dan Simmons. When Pahasapa, a young Sioux warrior, counts coup on General George Armstrong Custer as Custer lies dying on the battlefield of the Little Bighorn, the legendary general's ghost enters him, and his voice will speak to him for the rest of his event-filled life. Seamlessly weaving together the stories of Papasaha, Custer, and the American West, Dan Simmons depicts a tumultuous time in the history of both Native and white Americans, haunted by Custer's ghost and also by his ability to see into the memories and futures of legendary men like Sioux War Chief Crazy Horse. Pahasapa's long life is driven by a dramatic vision he experienced as a boy in his people's sacred Black Hills. In August of 1936, a dynamite worker on the massive Mount Rushmore project, Pahasapa plans to silence his ghost forever and reclaim his people's legacy. On the very day FDR comes to Mount Rushmore to dedicate the face. And that is Black Hills, and that is by Dan Simmons. Okay. And like I said, that's going to do it for South Dakota. So we're going to go ahead and move on to Tennessee. So the first one we're going to talk about with Tennessee is The House of Dust, and this is by Noah Broyles. And I have talked about this in another video before, so anyway. Deep in the heat and silence of rural Tennessee, down an untraveled road, sits the forgotten town of Three Summers. Mere miles away, on an overgrown river island, stands the house that once presided over the grand plantation of Angel's Landing, moss-draped, decrepit, waiting. Failing crime writer Bradley Ellison and former prostitute Missy Holiday are drawn to this place, fleeing a world turned against them. For Brad, it is work. He must find a compelling story before the true crime magazine he writes for judges him expendable. For Missy, it is recuperation. 4 years at the club have left her drained. But the price of peace is high, and soon Brad and Missy discover that something hides behind the quiet. Something moves in the night, something that manifests itself in bizarre symbols and disturbing funeral rites, something that twists back through time and clings in the dust of the ancient house. A presence they must uncover before their own past catches up with them. And that is The House of Dust, and that is by Noah Broyles. Okay, next we have got Revelator, and this is by Daryl Gregory. In 1933, 9-year-old Stella is left in the care of her grandmother, Maudie, in the backwoods of Tennessee. The mountains are home to dangerous secrets, and soon after she arrives, Stella wanders into a dark cavern where she encounters the family's personal god, an entity known as the Ghost Daddy. Years later, after a tragic incident that caused her to flee, Stella, now a professional bootlegger, returns for Maudie's funeral, and to check on the mysterious 10-year-old girl named Sunny that Maudie adopted. Sunny appears innocent enough, but she's more powerful than Stella could imagine. And she's a direct link to Stella's buried past and her family's destructive faith. Haunting and wholly engrossing, summoning mesmerizing voices and giving shape to the dark, Revelator is a Southern Gothic tale for the ages. And that is Revelator, and that is by Daryl Gregory. Okay, next up we have got The Red Church, and this is by Scott Nicholson. The church was constructed in the 1860s under the guidance of Reverend Wendell McFall. His sermons declared the existence of God's second son, whose mission it is to undo all of Jesus' work on earth. But when he sacrificed a child to support his rantings, his congregation hung him from the rafters of his own sanctuary. For 20 years, the Red Church has stood empty, crumbling to ruin. It has become a site for Halloween pranks and the setting for ghost stories, including one about the thing that lives in the bell tower, a creature being blamed for a brutal murder that occurred in the church's graveyard. Now Archer McFall has purchased the church to house a temple of two sons, whose zealous worshippers will stop at nothing to see the second son return to his rightful glory. And that is The Red Church, and that is by Scott Nicholson. Okay. Moving on, we have got Summer Sons, and this is by Lee Mandello. Andrew and Eddie did everything together. Best friends bonded more deeply than brothers until Eddie left Andrew behind to start his graduate program at Vanderbilt. 6 months later, only days before Andrew was to join him in Nashville, Eddie dies of an apparent suicide. He leaves Andrew a horrible inheritance, a roommate he doesn't know, friends he never asked for, and a gruesome phantom that hungers for him. As Andrew searches for the truth of Eddie's death, he uncovers the lies and secrets left behind by the person he trusted most. Discovering a family history soaked in blood and death, whirling between the backstabbing academic world where Eddie spent his days and the circle of hot boys, fast cars, and hard drugs that ruled Eddie's nights, the walls Andrew has built against the world begin to crumble. And there's something awful lurking, waiting for those walls to fall. And that is Summer Sons, and that is by Lee Mandello. Okay. And next up I've got a very brief synopsis for Child of God, and this is by Cormac McCarthy. Now, I know that McCarthy's books are not necessarily horror, but it seems like a lot of McCarthy's books have these characters in them that are so terrifying and human, but are terrifying even though they are human, that they come across as inhuman monsters. All right, a good example is Anton Chigurh from No Country for Old Men. I mean, this is a human, but I was reminded so much of like the Terminator, and the Terminator movies with Anton Chigurh, because he was such a soulless, remorseless character. He was just terrifying. Anyway, let me get on to this synopsis. In this taut-chilling novel, Lester Ballard, a violent, dispossessed man falsely accused of rape, haunts the hill country of East Tennessee when he is released from jail. While telling his story, Cormac McCarthy depicts the most sordid aspects of life with dignity, humor, and characteristic lyrical lyrical brilliance. And that's Child of God, and that is by Cormac McCarthy. Okay, next we have got Whispers in the Dark, and this is by Laurel Hightower. Rose McFarland is a trained killer, a Memphis SWAT sniper with a secret. Her team knows about the burn scars that lurk under her clothes, a legacy of the house fire that killed her father and brother 16 years before. Her supervisors know that she spent 2 years in a rehabilitative facility, healing and learning to cope with the emotional trauma of the fire. But no one knows about the visions that drove her there, angry spirits that had consumed her childhood, alienated her from her family, and made her doubt her own sanity. The Whispers. When Charlie Akers, a half-brother she never knew, ends up on the wrong side of Rose's rifle, she unwittingly sets off a chain of events that puts her family in the middle of increasingly dangerous paranormal visitations. Charlie won't stay dead, and soon ghosts from Rose's past are creeping back into her life. People she's killed in the line of duty, every one of them under the influence of Rose's greatest fear, the Whispers themselves. As the walls between our world and the world of the dead grow thin, Rose will have to face her old nightmares to stop the Whispers from breaking free. If she can, it won't just be Memphis that falls to the dead. There will be no safe place left on the earth for the living. And that is Whispers in the Dark? Yes, Whispers in the Dark by Laurel Hightower. Okay, so next, we're doing Tennessee right now, and there is no way you can not talk about horror and Tennessee without talking about the Bell Witch, and that is exactly what I'm going to be doing with three books in this series of recommendations. The first one is a nonfiction, and the other two are fictional based books. So the first one is The Bell Witch, and this is by Brent Monahan. Known throughout Tennessee as Old Kate, the Bell Witch took up residence with John Bell's family in 1818. It was a cruel and noisy spirit, given to rapping and gnawing sounds before it found its voices. With these voices and its supernatural acts, the Bell Witch tormented the Bell family. This extraordinary book recounts the only documented case in U.S. history when a spirit actually caused a man's death. The local school teacher, Richard Powell, witnessed the strange events and recorded them for his daughter. His astonishing manuscript fell into the hands of novelist Brent Monahan, who has prepared the book for publication. Members of the Bell family have previously provided information on this fascinating case, but this book recounts the tale with novelistic vigor and verve. It is truly chilling. And that is The Bell Witch, and that is by Brent Monahan. Okay. Moving on, we have The Bell Witch, and this is a fictional account, and this is by John F.D. Taft. Sometimes the scariest tales are true, inspired by actual events. It's 1817 and Tennessee is on the western frontier as America expands into the unknown. In idyllic Adams County, home of the Bell family, there exists a collection of tight-knit rural communities with deeply held beliefs and even more deeply buried secrets. Jack and Lucy Bell operate a prosperous family farm northwest of Nashville, where life with their many children is peaceful. Simple country life, that is until those secrets take on a life of their own and refuse to remain unspoken. Much has been written about the legend of the Bell Witch of Tennessee, but the details of the Bell's family's terrifying experience with the supernatural have never been told in quite the way that Bram Stoker Award-nominated horror author John F.D. Taft has conceived. In his novel, for the first time, the witch has her own say, and what she reveals about the incident and the dark motivations behind her appearance reaches way beyond a traditional haunting. Forget what you've read about this holy American legend. What you believe you know about the mysterious occurrences on the Bell Farm are wrong. Uncover the long-hidden reality that's far more horrifying than any ghost story you've ever read. And that is The Bell Witch, and that is by John F.D. Taft. Okay. All right. And next up, we have got Little Sister Death, and this is by William Gay. David Binder is a young, successful writer living in Chicago and suffering from writer's block. He stares at the blank page, and the blank page stares back harder. So when his agent suggests maybe a lighter sophomore novel, maybe something genre that they can sell real quick and buy him some more time to pen his magnum opus, he's quick to recall an old ghost story he once heard. With his pregnant wife and his young daughter in tow, he sets out for Tennessee with high hopes of indulging the local lore surrounding Virginia Beale, fairy queen of the haunted dell, and whiling away the summer away from life in the city. But as his investigation goes further and further, and the creaking of the floorboards grows louder and louder, the David Binder realizes he's not only the David Binder, I think that's supposed to be just David Binder. David Binder realizes he's not only endangering himself, but also his wife and daughter. A stirring literary rendition of Tennessee's famed Curse of the Bell Witch, Little Sister Death skillfully toes the line between Southern Gothic and horror, and further cements William Gay's legacy as not only one of the South's finest writers, but among the best that American literature has to offer. And that is Little Sister Death, and that is by William Gay. All right, last but not least, we have got All Hallows Dead, and this is by Brian Smith. It's Halloween week in Willow Springs, Tennessee, and a mad slasher is on the loose. 25 years ago, a group of local boys did a very bad thing. Now a masked killer is leaving a trail of corpses and bloody pumpkins all over town. Brutal vengeance against his former tormentors, and 31 dead for Halloween are the madman's demented goals. As the body count mounts, local law enforcement scrambles to track down the seemingly unstoppable killer and bring the carnage to an end. And that is All Hallows Dead, and that is by Brian Smith. And that is going to do it for Horror Across America and South Dakota and Tennessee. So, until next time, take care and stay scared. Bye-bye.